extremism can come from completely different directions but still end up in the same place: segregation, supremacy, and hostility. So in the end, I see them as mirror images. Hi everyone, habari zenu, como esta, horo wanyu, konnichiwa, guten tag, and all the other greetings. It is Kenyan Hippie back with a new video. If you just came across my channel for the very first time or across my video, hi, I hope you will stick around and learn something and possibly subscribe. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much. Your support means the world to me. Make sure you hit that notification bell though so that you know when I upload new content. Today I want to discuss a topic that might raise some eyebrows, so to speak. And I think it is definitely worth exploring in especially the day and age we're living in, especially in America. I've been living in the US for 12 years as a Kenyan immigrant. And in that time, I've paid very close attention to the cultural and political conversations that have been happening. One thing I've noticed is how two public figures come from completely different racial backgrounds and political movements. However, they share many similar beliefs. I know. I'm talking about Nick Fuentes on the white nationalism side and Dr. Umar Johnson on the black nationalism side. On the surface, these men appear to be polar opposites. One is a young white conservative voice who associates himself with the so-called America First movement. The other is a Pan-African psychologist, quotation marks are there on purpose, who speaks to audiences about Black empowerment and independence. But if you look closer at their messages, you start to see that they overlap in some very interesting and, might I say, troubling ways. First thing, their opposition to interracial relationships. Nick Fuentes often criticizes white people who dare date or marry outside of their race, arguing that it weakens white identity and dilutes their heritage.
I'm not living around blacks. Sorry. You know, I want white kids, and I don't want my white kids bringing home black people to marry. It's racial for me. And call me racist. Oh, very Christian of you. I don't give a...
We're all talking about politics. And it comes up, we're talking about interracial relationships and marriage. And I said, well, I'm not in favor of interracial marriages. That's against my values. I want to have a white wife. I want to have white kids. That's important to me. But my values are not just who I'm in love with and things like that. It's also my heritage, my identity, my race. And, I like the idea. It is important to me. My parents look a certain way. Their parents look a certain way. We come from a certain place. I like the unbroken chain. And I want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren to have a similar complexion. I want them to have similar hair. Because these kinds of things, they echo. We're all connected, not just in time horizontally, but vertically across the generations. And so the idea that, 2 or 3 generations down the line, one of my children bears no resemblance to me at all, it's almost as if we're not related. It's almost as if I never existed. And there's something very disturbing to me about that. J.D. Vance also has a non-white wife, an Indian wife, and a kid named Vivek. All his kids have Indian names. So it's like, what exactly are we getting here? And that's not a dig at him just because I'm a racist or something. But it's like, who is this guy really? Do we really expect that the guy who has an Indian wife and named their kid Vivek is going to support white identity?
Keep the bloodline white. That's his messaging. On the other hand, Dr. Umar is famous for saying that black men and women who marry outside of their race essentially betray the black community. Case in point. He believes this undermines black unity and weakens economic and cultural progress.
Umar, are you totally against interracial relationships?
I am totally against it, and I want to make sure you understand why. The reason I'm against interracial marriage, Envy and Charlemagne, is because marriage is an economic contract. It's an economic contract. Most women do not marry down in status. They marry up. And if you don't believe me, show me a rich white woman married to a broke-ass black man. Because marriage is a political decision. Who you marry tells me who you are. When you marry a woman, you don't just marry her. You marry her culture, you marry her community, you marry her people. You understand? So when a black man marries a white woman, he's making several in messages he's sending out to his own people. Because there's no greater symbol of your loyalty to your struggle than to marry a sister who shares that struggle. Black men have married outside their race envy more than the men of all other races in America put together as a percentage. How do you explain that? Is love purely blind? I disagree. Love is a function of your values and your priorities.
As someone who's lived in this country for over a decade, I find it fascinating that two men from such different communities who historically have been at odds, as you guys know, America has a very painful racial history, can come to the same conclusion about interracial marriage and relationships. For them, it's not about universal love or personal freedom. It's about protecting the bloodline, keeping racial barriers intact. The second thing they have in common is the focus on racial pride as a driving force. Racial pride is the one thing that unites these two men. Nick Fuentes speaks very highly about European heritage, Western civilization, and the need for whites to take pride in their history.
Like, there's a white genocide going on in the world. White people are being systematically replaced in America and Europe through immigration and to a much lesser extent due to intermarrying. This guy has a non-white wife and a kid named Vivek. This guy is going to be a defender of white identity? I don't think so. This guy's going to defend American identity? If he does, it's going to be no better than any of these other civic nationalists like Vivek Ramaswamy. How else could you countenance American identity if you have a mixed up family like that?
What do you think that white folks are better at, than I guess any other race?
Better than any other race? Yeah. Well, I would say that every race has their strength. I would say the white people are very good at literature and architecture and philosophy and
basically everything.
When I say whites are more innovative, it's because although Asians have very high IQ and are clearly predisposed to being good at math, I know that's like a stereotype, but it's based on fact. They outperform every other group in math. They're not as innovative. And that has a lot to do with their culture. That has a lot to do with their history. And of course, history and culture are, in fact, bound up with genetics. Behavior is bound up with genetics. We say things like the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. What does that mean? Children are like their parents. And there's a question about, is that nature? Is that nurture? It has a great deal to do with nature, more so than many people care to admit. And the point is, so Asians, although you could say in one sense they're smarter, better than other groups, they're maybe not as innovative. That's why they steal American technology. That's why they struggle to do a lot of things the Americans do. And so the point is, and I get back to the previous point, all human beings, I believe, have inherent dignity, and they have a soul, and they have a brotherhood and universality and equality before God. But that does not change the fact that there are inequalities between peoples and groups on various different things.
Dr. Umar, on the other hand, emphasizes African descent, Black excellence, Pan-African unity, and the need to uplift Black culture above all others.
I don't go around convincing people they're African. You feel me? Even when I'm in South Africa, they have a population known as coloreds, right? Mixed race. But they'll tell you in a minute, I am not African, I am colored. You know why? Because they don't have a reason to be proud to be Black. But the minute Black people in South Africa take them diamond mines back, and take them gold mines back, they'll be African then.
Yep, facts.
You ain't gotta convince nobody to be Black when Blackness equals respect. Until Blackness equals respect, nobody wants to be a part of it. Get our power back. We gotta stop letting people appropriate our culture. I think it's very disrespectful when we let non-Africans appropriate the culture, because everybody wants to be black when it's time to play ball, when it's time to rap, when it's time to drink, go to the club, smoke some weed.
See, let us be clear now. We invented the gas mask before we could sit next to white kids. Right. We invented the stoplight before we could sit next to white kids. We invented the refrigerated truck before we could sit next to white kids. The golf tee before we could sit next to white kids. We invented the machine to tie the sole of a shoe to the top of a shoe before we could sit next to white kids. Most of America's most significant inventions came out of the minds of black children who had never sat next to white kids. The reason they wanted to desegregate was to control the quality of the education, because America considered the intellectual brilliance of the black child to be a national security issue.
What ties their messages together is a mindset of exclusivity. They both believe their specific racial group holds unique value that must be preserved at all costs. As someone who identifies as both Kenyan and American, I can see the power in cultural pride. But cultural pride, when it becomes an idea of separation, tends to close doors instead of opening them. I have always been a huge advocate of culture is meant to be shared. Culture is meant to be appreciated. Culture is meant to be embraced and understood, not appropriated and not exploited, and not gatekept. The next thing these two men have in common is segregation of culture. Both of these men believe in cultural segregation. For Nick Fuentes, it's the idea that America should remain white dominant.
More and more, I know this is like Mr. Based, okay? I know this is Mr. Based on the phone. But the older I get, the more I realize it is really this simple. We need white men in charge of everything again. That's it. Like, it's that simple. You sort of start to get based and you kind of realize what's up. And you have this inkling in your head. You're like, man, we need white men in charge of everything. And then people kind of get convinced, like, no, it's about ideology. We need like right-wing patriots that love the free market. Or like, no, we need like trad Christians. It's like, no, dude, we need white men running everything.
And that multiculturalism has failed.
No, I'm a believer in race. I think that race is real. I'm a Catholic, so I think that we're all created equal by God.
Your political sort of idea of what you want America to really look like, you want it to be more Catholic?
Yeah, I want it to be more Christian. I think it needs to be more white. I do think it needs to be more European. We've always had black people in this country, Hispanics, Asians, going back hundreds of years. But we've had like 50 million immigrants come in 30 years. And I'm sitting here looking at a city like LA. When is enough enough? We don't want to be around black people anymore. We don't want to live near them. We don't want to associate with them. When we see them coming, we go the other way.
For Dr. Umar, it's about black communities needing to detach themselves from white influence in order to thrive. He pushes for independent black schools, businesses, social structures.
Black people were learning just fine prior to 1954. They did not desegregate public schools so black children could get a better education. They desegregated black schools because they were concerned about the growth of black excellence.
Every non-white person in America stands in solidarity with the white power structure against African people. Let me say it one more time, my politically uneducated, multicultural Negropeans.
Despite coming from different lenses, both of these men are promoting the same vision: separation, mistrust, and withdrawal. A shared collectivist view. One element that often goes unnoticed is that both men share a very strong collectivist mindset. They see the individual as secondary to the group, the racial group. Nick Fuentes urges white people to stop thinking about themselves as individuals and instead to commit to the survival of the white society as a whole.
The reason that people have negative attitudes about black people is because most people's interactions with black people are negative. Most people's interactions with black people is when you're stuck in traffic and you see a Nissan Altima speeding down the shoulder. And you say, what the fuck? You're not supposed to do that. If everybody did that, it would just be another lane. And, not everybody can do that. But it's like these people have no respect for decorum. They think the rules don't apply to them. They have no respect for society. Like that's their interaction is they are a waiter and they wait on a black table and the black people don't tip.
Dr. Umar, on the other hand, says something very similar, that black men and women should prioritize the progress of their black community over personal choices, even when it comes to marriage or career paths.
If a European Jew is born in Africa and he plays tennis, is he going to represent Africa or is he going to represent Israel?
Probably Israel.
Thank you. So it ain't got nothing to do with where you're born. It's where your loyalty is. And until black people get organized, fellas, many of our mixed race children are going to identify with the other race because they're doing better than we are. I don't care if you're from Africa, because I'm a Pan-Africanist, so it's all one family for me. I don't care if you're in the Caribbean, Brazil, Europe, Australia, the continent, Canada. Two things. Are you biologically black and are you psychologically black? And when I say psychologically black, do you identify with your primary race?
In both of these cases, individuality is being sacrificed for the sake of the collective identity. To them, the greatest betrayal is someone who chooses love, lifestyle, or an opportunity that doesn't seem to align with the best interest of the racial group. This collectivist mindset is striking because while the groups are very different, the instinct is the same. The group comes first, the individual comes second, or not at all. There is this matter between the two men of intellectual and cultural inferiority. Neither Nick Fuentes nor Dr. Umar Johnson uses the blunt language of racism from the past, but both their beliefs point in that direction. Nick often suggests that non-white societies don't match the achievements of Europe.
Or another, Niger, which behaviors, the things that people, it's not just the private wealth. Society's real wealth is in its behaviors, the things that people do. Like, for example, Nigeria, or another, Niger, which there's stuff going on there. These African countries aren't just less wealthy because they have less stuff or less money. They're less wealthy because they're not safe, because the people don't have the same kind of habits and culture that we have.
Dr. Umar, on the other hand, supposes and claims that white people lack certain depths of intellectuality and spirituality that are inherent in black people.
Y'all think white folks want to be you. No, they don't. They want to take the cultural, the intellectual, the historical attributes of African people, but they want to leave the racial categorization. They want to leave the white supremacy victimization.
Both of them leave no room for equality because one is either better or worse than the other. One group is always framed as higher and the other one as lower, depending on your perspective, their perspective. And what worries me the most is these men have their very avid followers who believe in their ideologies. Fuentes is not the only one who thinks that. You have people like Richard Spencer and a few other individuals I have met even on X. I call them the woke right. Dr. Umar also has his own following that believes the same thing. As someone who was not born here but has lived here for 12 years, I've seen how counterproductive and dangerous these ideologies can be. Both men present themselves as defenders of their people. But what they're really doing is spreading division. America's strength, from an immigrant's perspective, a legal immigrant's perspective, comes from when individuals are free to pursue their lives, regardless of color, without being shackled to certain racial group expectations. My Kenyan upbringing taught me that culture is meant to be celebrated and preserved, but it should not trap you. And especially as an immigrant, it is your duty to assimilate into the culture to which you're moving. It goes without saying. The issue we're having is mostly the illegals who come to the countries uninvited, but they're allowed to by the Liberal or Labour parties, and they're not interested in assimilating because they're not one of you. They don't care. They're the ones messing it up for everyone else. Pride in identity is good, but when collectivism becomes enforced by guilt or shame, it does not build, it suffocates. You should be proud of who you are as a person. You should be proud of your achievements. You should never tie your pride to your race, or your skin tone. That becomes problematic. What Nick Fuentes and Dr. Umar Johnson show us is that extremism can come from completely different directions but still end up in the same place: segregation, supremacy, and hostility. So in the end, I see them as mirror images. Both push racial collectivism and exclusivity. Both condemn interracial relationships and marriages. Both use cultural pride as a weapon instead of a bridge. That's my take as a Kenyan immigrant and a Kenyan conservative immigrant living in America. Have you listened to these two men? Has this given you a different perspective on their messaging and how similar it is? The funny thing is that this was inspired by a conversation between my husband and I, because we were talking about Nick Fuentes. He watched this interview he had with Candace Owens, and I've always felt a certain way about Nick Fuentes because I knew he was a white supremacist. And then I got to thinking, I was like, he sounds a lot like Dr. Umar because he preaches the same thing just on the other side. And I thought it would be fun to make a video comparing the two of them and how they are very much mirror images of each other, which is ironic to me, but something that we need to be aware of. So if you have stuck around this far, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you are notified whenever I post any new videos. I will see you guys in the next video. Kenyan Hippie out.